Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hockey Talk TG Podcast. I'm Ty Glenn, and you're listening to this on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your local podcast streaming platforms. So today, I'm going to try and make this a little bit of a short podcast because not really that much to talk about. I'm just going to recap Game 7 of the Oilers and Canucks from yesterday, and then we'll preview the conference final between the Oilers and Stars for the West and the Panthers and Rangers for the East. So let's start with Game 7 of the Canucks and the Oilers. So the Oilers, they hold on for the 3-2 win in Game 7 to advance to the Western Conference Final, and they will face the Dallas Stars. Now these two teams, based on my knowledge of hockey, they have never met in the playoffs before. Maybe they might have met in the playoffs before, but that was probably during the 80s and 90s. But from my knowledge, I don't think these two teams have met in the playoffs before. But anyway, Game 1 is Thursday, May 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Central Time on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had the game-winning goal, and he also had an assist for a 2-point night. So congrats right there. And the Oilers, they outshot the Canucks 29-17 in this game, and they outshot them 13-2 in that first period. So it felt like the Canucks weren't getting a shot on goal. I don't know. I know Brock Besser was out due to blood clots. And it felt like the Canucks, they weren't ready to play Game 7. Though they tried to make a comeback in that third period, they tried to make it an actual game. And the Canucks fans, they were hyped up. They thought the Canucks were going to come back and win this series, just like the Sharks came back from like 3-4 goals down in that Game 7 to win their series over the Vegas Golden Knights in 2019. I thought it was going to be the same thing 4 years later with the Oilers and Canucks. Well, actually, not 4 years later. 5 years later. Sorry. 5 years later. So I thought it was going to be the same thing 5 years later with the Canucks and Oilers, but it turns out the Oilers, they held on for the win. They advanced to the Western Conference Final, but I got to give it up to the Canucks because we weren't expecting the Canucks to be in the Stanley Cup playoffs at the start of the 2023-2024 regular season, and we didn't expect the Oilers to be in the playoffs either because they were terrible at the start of the season, and they turned it around. So we didn't expect these two teams to be in the playoffs, and we definitely didn't expect the Canucks to be in the playoffs. So between the Oilers and the Canucks weren't even like the most favorite to be in the playoffs. But somehow, some way, they turned the season around. They advanced to the Stanley Cup playoffs. They beat the Nashville Predators in 6 games. They tried to put up a fight against Edmonton in the second round, ended up coming short, but still, great run. And give it up to Archer Sivasov, too, because he stepped in when Thatcher Demko and Casey DeSmith got injured. So he stepped in. He led the Canucks. He's going to have a bright future with the Vancouver Canucks in the next few years or so. Like, I can see him being one of the best goalies for the Canucks right there. So I got to give it up to Archer Sivasov, and I got to give it up to the Vancouver Canucks in general. Stuart Skinner, he started this game for the Edmonton Oilers. He made 15 saves on 17 shots, faced the net. So, yeah, and the Canucks, the last time they hosted a Game 7 was, of course, the 2011 Stanley Cup Final, where they fell up short to the Boston Bruins, losing 4-0 in the shutout. And, of course, the Bruins won the Stanley Cup that year. 13 years later, 2024, they didn't get shut out. They tried to put up a fight. I will say that. They tried to make it an actual Game 7, but fell up short. But in that first and second period, they were just like slow. They weren't generating enough. Nobody was stepping up. So it just felt like they didn't want to play. But in the third period, they gave the fans something, but they couldn't capitalize. But great series all in all. Love seeing those two Canadian NHL teams go at it. So it was like a really great series. It's probably not one of my number one favorite series in the playoffs. Probably not my number one favorite. But that was, I'll probably say, in my top 5 best series in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. Now we're going to preview the conference final. So, of course, we're down to the final 4 teams. It all comes down to 4. So we got the Oilers and Stars in the West. Got the Panthers and Rangers in the East. So we're going to start with the Oilers and Stars. Going to preview that Western Conference Final first. So, of course, Game 1 of that series is Thursday, May 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Central Time on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. The Oilers got there by beating the LA Kings for the 3rd straight year. Not only in this time, it wasn't in 7 games, but it was in 5 games that they beat the LA Kings. And, of course, they defeated the Canucks in 7 games. The Stars got there by defeating the defending Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights in 7 games and winning against the Avalanche in 6. Fun fact, this is the first time that a team has beaten the last 2 recent Stanley Cup winners. So, of course, the Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup last year, and the Colorado Avalanche won the Stanley Cup in 2022. So that's the first time that NHL team has beaten the last 2 Stanley Cup winners right there. And also, fun fact, Connor McDavid's first NHL goal was against the Dallas Stars. So that's also a fun fact to point out. So we'll see if he scores again in this series. He has 21 points in the playoffs. He only has 2 goals, so he hasn't really been generating enough as most of us thought he would in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But we'll see if he scores against the Dallas Stars, just like he scored his first NHL goal against the Dallas Stars. All right, so the Stars, of course, they finished the regular season 52-21-9. They were the number 1 seed in the Central Division, whereas the Oilers finished the regular season 49-27-6, and they were the number 2 seed in the Pacific Division. Emil Heiskanen, he leads the Stars in the playoffs with 13 points, so 5 goals, 8 assists for 13 points. Emil Heiskanen, one heck of a player to watch for the Dallas Stars. Of course, him and Cale Makar, probably the best defenseman in the league. If not being the top 2 defensemen in the league, they're just like 2 of the best defensemen in the league to watch. I can name a whole lot of other great defensemen like Quinn Hughes, Seth Jones, Roman Josi, and lots more. Victor Hedman, another one. So, yeah, those are some great defensemen right there. Anyway, Jake Oettinger, he started all 13 games for the Dallas Stars, and he went 8-5 with a 2.09 goals against average and a .918 save percentage. Regular season wise, the Stars were 2-0-1 against the Oilers. They won 4-3 on the road on November 2nd, 2023, and had a 5-0 shutout at home on April 13th. The only one regular season loss was in overtime, obviously. They lost 4-3 in overtime at home on February 17, 2024. For the Oilers side, Leon Draisaitl leads the Oilers in the playoffs with 24 points. So 8 goals, 16 assists for 24 points for Leon Draisaitl. Connor McDavid, he's right behind him with 21 points. So, like I mentioned before, 2 goals, 19 assists for 21 points for Connor McDavid. So, in the Western Conference Final, I would really like to see Connor McDavid step up, light the lamp a little bit in this Western Conference Final. Because when you see Connor McDavid score, he's not a goal scorer like Austin Matthews and Alex Ovechkin, but come on, when you see Connor McDavid score, Connor McDavid, he's more like a playmaker. That's how I see it. Like every time he plays, he's, in my opinion, a playmaker. That's how I see it. I don't know how you guys see it, but I see him more as a playmaker than a goal scorer. So, yeah, that's just something I wanted to bring up. Zach Hyman, he leads the Oilers with 11 goals, and he leads the NHL with 11 goals. So he's really stepping up right there. Probably won't win the Conn Smythe Trophy. I don't know if the Oilers do happen to go to the Stanley Cup Final. But come on, Connor McDavid, he deserves a cup, which I'll get into predictions at the end of this episode. I'll get into my predictions right there, so I won't spoil them just yet. Stuart Skinner, he started. Well, actually, no, he didn't. But he's 7-3 in the playoffs with a 2.87 goals against average and a .881 save percentage. And he managed to get one shutout in the Stanley Cup playoffs, which, of course, that was in Game 4 of the first round between the LA Kings and Edmonton Oilers. Calvin Pickard, he started 2 games in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He is 1-1 with a 2.21 goals against average and a .915 save percentage. He did come in relief of Stuart Skinner in Game 3 of that second round series between the Vancouver Canucks and Edmonton Oilers, and gets the job done in Game 4, and I think Game 4 and Game 5. I think he started those 2 games right there, Game 4 and Game 5. Both these teams have won Stanley Cups, so it wouldn't be a surprise to see one of these teams go to the Stanley Cup final and win the Stanley Cup. The Stars only won 1 Stanley Cup championship. That was in 1999, where they beat the Buffalo Sabres right there. Brett Hull with that overtime game-winning goal right there in the clinching game. The Stars' last Stanley Cup final appearance was 2020. That was during the bubble. That was during COVID. And they came up short to the Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. So that was their last Stanley Cup final appearance. The Oilers, they won the Stanley Cup 5 times. 5 times the Oilers won the Stanley Cup. That was in 1984, 1985, 1987, 1988, and 1990. Of course, Wayne Gretzky. They had Wayne Gretzky. They had Mark Messier. They had Yari Curry, Grant Fuhr, and Paul Coffey, and a few other Oilers players I can't name. Oilers' last Stanley Cup final appearance was in 2006, where they lost to the Carolina Hurricanes in 7 games. Right there. So we'll see if they can go on to the Stanley Cup final, or will be the Dallas Stars going to the Stanley Cup final. We will just have to see. Like I said, I will give my predictions to you guys at the end of this video, or in this case, episode. All right, so now we got Panthers and Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final. Game 1 is Wednesday, May 22nd at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time on ESPN. So the Conference Final starts tomorrow with that game right there. The Rangers, they finished the regular season 55-23-4. They won the President's Trophy. They were the number 1 seed in the Metropolitan Division. They had 114 points. The Panthers, on the other hand, 52-24-6, number 1 seed in the Atlantic. They had 110 points. And this is actually the first time that a President's Trophy winner has advanced to the conference final, because we all know the President's Trophy curse. A President's Trophy winner has came up short in the first round or the second round during that curse. So congrats to the Rangers. It's going to be a tough fight against the Florida Panthers, though, in the Eastern Conference Final. So this is kind of tough to pick predictions here. But like I said, that will be at the end of this episode. The Panthers, they were 2-0-1 in their season series meets against the New York Rangers, and this is the first time since 1997. That was the year the Red Wings won the Stanley Cup against the Philadelphia Flyers. So yeah, first time since 1997 that these two teams will meet in the conference finals, and the Rangers won that series in 5 games in the first round. It's not going to be that way this year, I can tell you that. For them, Mika Zibanejad and Vincent Trocheck both lead the team with 14 points. So Mika Zibanejad has 3 goals, 11 assists for 14 points. And Vincent Trocheck has 8 goals, 6 assists for 14 points. And of course, Chris Kreider stepping up for the team, lighting the lamp 7 times right there. So, of course, he leads the team in goals. Igor Shesterkin has started all 10 games for the New York Rangers, and he's arguably the best goalie in the playoffs. So just pointing that out right there. He's 8-2 with a 2.40 goals against average and a .923 save percentage. So can't wait to see what Igor Shesterkin does in the Eastern Conference Final in their series against the Florida Panthers. All right, so for the Panthers side, the Panthers, they're in the Eastern Conference Final for the second straight year. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games and beat the Boston Bruins in 6 games to advance to the Eastern Conference Final. Matthew Tkachuk stepping up for the Panthers when they need him the most. He has 14 points in the playoffs, 4 goals, 10 assists right there for 14 points. No surprise there. Carter Verhaeghe, he scored the overtime game-winning goal against the Boston Bruins in that first-round series in 7 games. He leads the team with 6 goals. Of course, Sam Reinhart, no surprise that he'll step up for the Florida Panthers in the Eastern Conference Final. He led the Panthers with 57 goals in the regular season. And Sergei Bobrovsky, he started all 11 games for the Florida Panthers, and they're 8-3 in the playoffs. Well, he's 8-3 in the playoffs, with a 2.37 goals against average and a .902 save percentage. And, of course, we all know the result from last year for the Florida Panthers. They swept the Hurricanes last year in the Eastern Conference Final. Matthew Tkachuk really stepping up his game in that series right there. Of course, scored the game winner in Game 4 for the Panthers to advance to the Stanley Cup Final. Of course, they came up short to the Vegas Golden Knights in 5 games. So we'll see if it'll be the same result last year if they do happen to go to the Stanley Cup Final. And they will play either the Oilers or Stars. And, of course, last Stanley Cup Final appearance for the Florida Panthers was 2023. The Rangers' last Stanley Cup Final appearance was 2014, where they lost to the LA Kings in 5 games. And the Panthers, they have no Stanley Cups so far. The Rangers, on the other hand, they have won the Stanley Cup 4 times, 1928, 1933, 1940, and 1994. Their last recent Stanley Cup win was in 1994. Of course, they had Mark Messier on their team then, and Mike Richter, and other Rangers players on that team that I cannot name. So, yeah. All right, guys. So before we head off, we're going to give out predictions. So Oilers and Stars should be a great series. Either a cup or bust for Connor McDavid. I want to lean on the Dallas Stars in winning the series in 6 games. I know I voted against the Oilers, where I had the Canucks winning against the Oilers either in 6 or 7 games in that second round series. I'm voting against Edmonton again. I know Connor McDavid deserves a cup. So if the Oilers do happen to win the series against the Dallas Stars and go on to the Stanley Cup Final, and if they do win the Stanley Cup, I'd be happy either way. But I'm kind of leaning on the Dallas Stars side. I just like their depth, their team. I feel like they have, I know the dynamic duo of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. It's going to be tough to go up against. I know that. I understand that. But I'm kind of leaning on Dallas to win this series in 6 games. I know Connor McDavid deserves a cup. He is one of the best players in the league, if not the best player in the league. But still, I'm leaning on the Stars to win the series in 6 games. For the Rangers and Panthers, this is going to be a tough series. It's not going to end in 5 games like it did in 1997. This is a whole different ball game now. So, with that being said, I know I have the Rangers winning on my bracket. I'm still going to go with the New York Rangers. It is going to be tough against the Florida Panthers. I know the Stars and Panthers were the odds-on favorite to go against each other in the Stanley Cup Final. We might get that. We could see Stars and Panthers in the Stanley Cup Final. It would not surprise me because they were the best odds, and we talked about it in the regular season. The Stars and Panthers could face each other in the Stanley Cup Final. And I did not think about that till now, but that was talked about in the regular season. But I had the Rangers winning on my playoff bracket. So I'm going to take the Rangers in 7 games. The Rangers are going to get it done in 7 games against the Florida Panthers. It is going to be a tough fight. It is going to be a tough series. The Panthers, they have a great team. Matthew Tkachuk doing his best to lead the team and get this team back to the Stanley Cup Final and win the Stanley Cup. but I'm going with the Rangers to win this series in 7 games. But it should be a great series as always, right? I mean, anything can happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but I know people have been talking about in the regular season that the Stars and Panthers have the best odds at facing against each other in the Stanley Cup final. That could be a most likely Stanley Cup final matchup right there, but I got the Rangers winning in 7. I got the Stars winning in 6. That's just how it's going to go. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you follow this podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and other of your local podcast streaming platforms. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Of course, there will be no NHL games today. I will be watching Game 1 of that Eastern Conference Final Series between the Indiana Pacers and Boston Celtics. I would love to see Jason Tatum get a ring. Either him, Luka Doncic, or Anthony Edwards will get a ring. So I'll be watching that game today since there's no NHL games on today. Of course, we do start the conference final tomorrow with Game 1 of the Panthers and Rangers at Madison Square Garden. So, yeah, can't wait. Like I said, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate each and every one of you that tunes in and each and every one of you that follows and is subscribed to the podcast. For those of you who are not subscribed and just watching or listening to my podcast, make sure you subscribe, because if you want to stay up to date on the latest hockey news, this is your podcast right here. And nobody loves the game of hockey and is obsessed with the game of hockey than me. So there might be billions and billions and millions of hockey fans in the world, but I love the game of hockey. I'm so passionate about it. I talk about it, write about it, report about it, play it, and yeah. So nobody loves this game more than I do. Yeah. Hopefully you guys have a great day. Hopefully, if you do watch Game 1 of that Eastern Conference Final between the Pacers and Celtics, good luck. If you're a Pacers fan or a Celtics fan, like I said, thank you guys for tuning in. God first as always. Be blessed. Have a nice day. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Hockey Talk TG. Well, actually, I might not be on here tomorrow. I will put it in my community tab on the Hockey Talk TG podcast YouTube channel. I don't know if I'll do an episode tomorrow, but I'll let you guys know on that community tab YouTube channel. That's why I always say make sure you're subscribed to that Hockey Talk TG podcast YouTube channel, because I always put my notes up there. But anyway, have a nice day. Peace.